I had this immediate understanding just from being with so many soldiers what was really happening out there. And a lot of people were in very much denial, and I kept saying, something big is coming, something bigger than we can imagine. I think this is the beginning of World War III.
How long have you lived here?
12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I originally moved over in 2008. I was living in Jerusalem, and I had a major accident when I was 20, and I'd had surgery a few months before I moved here, and then I had problems walking again, and it ended up, I was supposed to be, after 1 year, I went back to England to complete my aliyah, and actually with my grandfather's stone setting. And
Your grandfather?
My mum's dad had passed away actually the day I came out of hospital from my surgery. And I went back for his stone setting and to complete my aliyah.
Say this again, you went back for his what?
Stone setting.
Oh, stone setting, okay.
And then I was having, in the last few months, really bad problems walking. And I decided to make an appointment to see my surgeon whilst I was in England. And he said to me, you need to come back. It's going to be a 2 to 3 year process. And so I flew back for about 36 hours, packed up my stuff, and went back to England. Eventually did a very large surgery that was 7 weeks in the hospital and about 9 months at home at my mother's house, having help showering, dressing, physio, everything. And 2 years after the surgery, I turned around to my surgeon and I said, can I go home, please? And he said, yep. And I was here a few weeks later. I was 12, April will be 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's I don't consider England home anymore. It's strange. I grew up with an Israeli parent. My father was born in Tel Aviv. I have not had contact with him since I was 17. And I was quite adamant prior to moving to Jerusalem that I was English. To the point that people would ask me in England, like, where are you from? And I would say, England. Okay, eventually they say, where are your parents from? I said, oh, my father's from Israel, but I'm English. And when I first moved to Jerusalem, I thought I would be there maybe a couple of months maximum. And about 6 weeks in or so, I had this sort of epiphany moment one day. I was sat on a bus looking around, Erev Shabbat, and I suddenly just went, like someone turned the lights on in my head. I just suddenly went out loud like, I'm meant to live here. And I don't know where it came from. It was, in my opinion, God telling me this is where I was meant to be. And it took a while to accept it. I wasn't sure. I was like, really? I'm meant to live here? And yeah, that was it. It never switched off. And I came out here in the end of 2011. I used to work in restaurants, building restaurants, and I came out for a break. We'd just opened a new restaurant. I'd had mono. I was just exhausted, and I came out for a few weeks, and I'd convinced my brother in that couple of years to move out here, and I came to stay with him. And the night before I left, everybody came over to say goodbye, and they said, when are you coming back? And I said, oh, about 6 months. I've got a wedding coming up. And I got off the plane. I had an Israeli boyfriend. He picked me up from the airport, and 2 days later I said, we need to hang out, can we meet up? And he said, sure. And I said to him, I have to go home. And he was like, sorry? And the next day I turned up at my mum's house and knocked on her door, and she said, hey darling, how are you? I said, I'm all right, Mum. Mummy, I have to go home. And she said to me, but you just got here. I said, I know, but I have to go home. And she just instantly understood and said, you're going back to Israel, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And 10 weeks later, I was here.
Wow.
I just walked away from everything in London, said, this is not important. This is career, car, everything. Sell it, get rid of it, don't care. And hopped on a plane, and yeah, April 4th was 12 years ago.
Wow.
And I now live in Pardes Chana, which is close to Caesarea, or Caesarea. And I love it. It's known as the hippie town. in Israel. And it's the first place that I have found community. It's much more green, and it used to be a very sleepy area that nobody knew of, and now it's a busy town. There's great big fields outside my house, and I just love it. I've been there 3 years, and it suits me. It's the first place I felt in Israel where I really feel I have a community supporting me. I was in a major car accident 7 weeks ago. Whenever something happens, the whole community runs. And my neighbours, my landlords live upstairs. If I introduce them as my landlords, they tell me, "Ma pitom, we're family." And I love it. Yeah, and we know all our neighbours. And I mean, I lived in one building in Tel Aviv for almost 4 years. Never knew any of my neighbours' names. And I hated that. I'm not an apartment building kind of person anyway. And it felt so anonymous. And it felt like when I was in trouble, there was no one there who could support me. And in fact, you often find people fighting within apartment buildings here. And it just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm really happy to say that I found a spot that works for me. And my dream is to move to the north. It's always been that. I originally thought maybe next year I might be ready. And then the war kicked off. But please God, one day.
So you are a massage therapist, or what do you do for your...
I have a very eclectic career. I'm a specialist in babies, 0 to 3. I have worked with many new mothers, new families, teaching them what to look out for in the first year, how to get their babies to the milestones. I've also run kindergartens, nannied, run baby courses, all sorts of things. And the other half of my career was an operational manager. And I've worked in many fields. Mostly in Israel was within the startup field. One of the most famous companies I worked with is Citizen Cafe Ulpan, which is a great Hebrew learning program for speaking. When I joined them, they were just 6 weeks old. Now they have a beautiful company. I worked in the wedding industry. I've worked as a baker. I've worked in the diamond industry, all sorts of different companies. And I really honestly felt like I never found what I wanted to do with my life. Every few years, I find myself going back to childcare. I just felt it was where my heart is. I really believe that the first 5 years of life are extremely important, and that we learn most things there, and a lot of trauma gets stored from there throughout life. And I felt very protective of that stage. And then about 2 years ago, I gave everything up to go and learn to be a carpenter. It was a little dream of mine. I don't really know where it came from. I've always been handy, never had anyone to teach me. And I just thought, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do that? And so I started taking a course and then working for them. And up until the summer this year, I was working in a carpentry workshop. It was extremely hard. I'm the only woman they've ever hired. The majority of them are not Israeli, not Jews, mostly Arab Palestinians or Ukrainian and Russian. And sadly, I found that it's an extremely hard living to make in Israel. And I decided that I just couldn't do that. I'm 38 years old, and as I was turning 38, I thought, I need to be able to provide for myself. So I left, and I decided to take a couple of months of just odd jobs, just whilst I take a minute to really reevaluate. And then the war started, and October 7th, I was supposed to be at a party in the south, not at Nova, but at a ecstatic dance party, which was being held very close by. And 3 days prior, I called them up, and I was supposed to go as a helper, and I just said, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I have the energy this week. I'm gonna cancel. which is really rare. I don't cancel on things. If I commit to something, people know they can rely on me. But something told me to stay home. And then I normally sleep in. Saturday is my sleep day, and my dog respects that usually very well. I can sleep as long as I need. But that morning she woke me up at 7:40, desperate to go out. And I can say in 5 years, maybe 5 times has she ever done that. And I thought, what's up? Okay, I'm coming, let's go. And I got up in my pajamas, didn't take my phone with me, just take her out to pee. I bumped into a neighbour with her dogs, and she said to me, have you seen the news? And I said, I don't watch news. It's not good for the soul. I actively decided when I was in my early 20s that news does not work for me. And she said to me, you should look at the news. And I literally responded to her by saying, let me guess, more rockets? And she said, check the news. I thought, what on earth could have happened? Okay, so I went home and I picked up my phone. And from 8 a.m. until about 3 a.m, like everyone else, I was paralysed on my sofa, trying to work out what was happening, where my friends were, who was alive, where this party was, what was going on. I live in a very sweet spot of Israel that is sort of the south of the north and the north of the south that has not been hit by rockets for many years. But there was panic inside everyone. Early evening, I contacted one of my oldest friends who also lives out here. And her little brother had always dreamed of coming to be an IDF soldier. And I called her and I said, where is Nathaniel? Where is he? And she said, the last I heard from him was at 7 a.m. this morning as he was entering Gaza. And I told him to put extra safety gear on.
He was entering Gaza on October 7th?
His unit were the first unit to enter. They were right by the border. They are Golani, which is very respected in Israel. And from what I understand, they had gone in. I think the IDF didn't necessarily know what was happening at that point, but they understood and they sent a few units in. And there's sort of, in most units, there's sort of a social worker that's with them. And I think that she had been shot or something with her leg. And he said, I am not leaving her side. I will protect her life. And the entire unit were ambushed. And out of 30 young men, only 7 came out. He was like my little brother. I've known this family since I was a child. He was a 20-year-old kid. And I called her and I said, where's Nathaniel? She said, I don't know. But she's the most optimistic person I know in this world. And she said to me, he'll be fine, Tasha. He'll be fine. No news is good news. He'll be fine. I have faith. And I called a couple of friends in the area and I said, can I take your husband to reserve duty? Can I take him to Milawim? What can I do? I'm not married. I don't have children. And I felt like there would be so much pressure on them and I could help. And one of my very good friends, who I also grew up with in England, lives around the corner from me. And she was 37 weeks pregnant. And her husband said, they're letting me stay home for now. And I said, if it changes, don't hesitate. He phoned me at 7:15 on Sunday morning and he said, I have to go in. I said, no problem. I'm getting dressed. I'm coming. I went to their house. It was extremely hard to take away her husband, where she's pregnant with 3 young children at home. And as we got in the car, I got a phone call from my friend saying Nathaniel had died. And I said to myself, you don't cry. You don't cry right now. You drop these soldiers off and you don't cry. And I started driving. I don't even know how, but suddenly I found myself driving, I think, 4 different soldiers on that first day. And then I got a message saying that the funeral would be held the next morning, or the next day. Her parents were at the time in France. They're religious, so they had to notify them. They had to go to England, pick up their other daughter who was also pregnant, and come in. And on the Monday, I dropped my dog off at a friend and I said, I don't know what I need, but I need you to take her right now. And he said to me, whatever you need. And collected some people. We went to the funeral. They're the strongest family I know. Their mother went to see the body and then fell straight into my arms with a big smile saying how good it was to see me. I think it was the hardest funeral I've ever attended and maybe ever will. And I said to myself that day, I cannot do funerals right now. This is going to debilitate me. And in emergencies, I am someone who thrives. And I would not allow myself to be debilitated. So I sent my number that night to a few places that I'd heard of that needed help driving. And I said, use me. I think within 24 hours, I was getting at least 15 phone calls a day. Can you drive this to a base? Can you take equipment? Can you pick up a soldier? Can you take them dinner? Absolutely. And suddenly I found myself on the road 12, 13, 14 hours every day. I opened up my Instagram and I said, hey guys, I'm using 3 tanks of gas a day. If you know me, you know I don't like to ask for money. I'm not someone who borrows money of people, but I need help. Who wants to help me do this? And suddenly people said, how much is a tank of gas? We'll send you one. And then that continued for the next 2 weeks, dropping off bulletproof vests, helmets, soldiers, food, generators, whatever they needed, whatever I could do in a day. And on the second week, the soldiers started asking me, would you come and have coffee with us? And sometimes it was more a fact of there was too much bombing in those areas and I couldn't get back on the road, so I would just hang out with them for a bit. And nobody knew what was going on in the north, but I was predominantly in the north. And everybody just thought it was Gaza. And I was out there sheltering from rockets in the north. And okay. And at the time, it was just reservists in the north. And they started to tell me that their bodies hurt, that they were in pain. And I realized that the majority of these men have been in an office for over a decade. They've got families. They've moved on from their army duty. They're not in shape. I've had back problems since I was a child, since I was 15 years old. And at 20, I was involved in a relatively small car accident. Someone had smashed into me and I thought I was okay. And yet 3 days later, I woke up unable to move. I went through a 1.5 years of various treatments before a surgeon did a full scan of everything and told me that my spine was in a very delicate place and I could end up paralyzed if I didn't have surgery immediately. And he said, actually, I would have done it yesterday if I could. And 5 days later, I found myself at the age of 22 having surgery. 10 days in hospital. Had a lot of complications from the operation. We found out I was deathly allergic to morphine and lots of other medications. And it wasn't easy. And then 2 years later, I ended up having to have a complete spinal fusion, as well as some other bits and pieces done to my spine. And I ended up spending 7 weeks in hospital having to learn to walk again. My brain, the trauma had just totally frozen my brain. I could not put my feet down. They could not go one in front of the other. And I had lots of complications. I was in the ICU at the beginning. They actually had to strap me down to a bed for 7 days because my body was spasming so hard. So you can imagine it was very traumatic for me. And I was 24 years old. I have undergone years of therapies, hours and hours and hours of all sorts of treatments. The doctors have asked and I've tried whatever they needed. And until about 3 years ago, I was still taking 4 different Caldol epidurals a year to help me walk. And I was spending about a third of every year in bed. And now I'm proud to say that through a combination of Western treatments and holistic treatments and trauma healing, for 3 years I've not spent more than a day in bed at any point. So when they told me they were in pain, I thought there's no one better to understand it than me. I live in chronic pain. I actually don't remember what it's like not to be in pain. And I said, okay, we need to get you help. We need to get you through this. This is going to be a long war. I had this immediate understanding just from being with so many soldiers what was really happening out there. And a lot of people were in very much denial. And I kept saying, something big is coming, something bigger than we can imagine. I think this is the beginning of World War III. And everyone said, you're being dramatic. I said, I'm not. It's okay that you need to be protected right now, but my eyes are open. So I started to phone around. I heard there was groups of massage therapists. And I thought, who can I find? Who can help us? And anyone I managed to reach said to me straight up, we are only going south. We're going to treat the soldiers out of Gaza. And I said, what about the reservists? And they said, they're not doing anything. I said, normally they do nothing. It's kind of a joke within Israel that when you go on reservist duty, you're going to be sitting around a lot. But right now you're all very, very wrong. And these men need our help. And the next day, my car went into the mechanic. I've done almost 40,000 kilometers in the last almost 4 months. So you can imagine it's been a lot of maintenance on my old little car that was schlepping everything around. And I said to the mechanic, you can have my car if I can take over your office. And he said, go for it. And for the next 6 hours, I sat and I used Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook and contacted everyone and anyone I could think of and said, do you know therapists who might want to come and help me? Are you a therapist? Who wants to join me? Let's do something for these guys. And I really just thought at the beginning this was going to be like a short, quick, let's get a couple of people some help. And I suddenly found myself with 5, 6, 7 therapists available. And so I started to call the soldiers that I'd met along the roads and said, can we come and help you? No one's covering north. I want to help you. And 12 weeks ago today, Chayal's Angels was born.
Now, where's the name come from?
So the name came from, I was standing in a gas station one morning and someone said, we need a name, we need a logo, we need a t-shirt. And I went, okay. And I thought, what's catchy and honest? And I thought there's few words that Jews outside of Israel use regularly that Israelis don't even know these words in our accents. And one of them is Chayalim, which means soldiers. And I said, okay, so we're the Chayal's Angels. We're going to be an army for the army. You're an army, we're going to back you. Whatever you need, we got you. And put a call out on Instagram. Is there anyone who wants to help me with a logo? And a friend of a friend said, I'm a graphic designer. I would love to help you. And before you know it, Chayal's Angels came about. This was about a week in. And, often the soldiers go, who's Chaya? And I say, זה חיילים באנגלית, זה חייals. As חיילים is the plural. Chayal is the single, and so we're Chayal's Angels. And we started on October 27th, going to the first base up in Mount Hermon, which is the very top of the country. I'd met a guy who has now become a good friend, who had left Israel after living here for some time and now lives back in Los Angeles. And he jumped on a plane and said to the army, I need to come back in. Take me as a reservist. Let me help. And his unit was the first unit we got to. And we treated 100 soldiers on our first day.
And you treated them with?
on that very first day, we took chiropractor, 2 massage therapists, and that was it. Just the 4 of us went up. We just got in a car and went. And since then, we have been going out multiple days a week. We have grown massively. I now have over 100 therapists in our group. We have volunteers coming in from all sorts of countries, America, UK, Australia, who just want to help the soldiers, whether they come in for a week or a month, they want to help. And I have just figured out a way to bridge the gap between the people who want to help our soldiers and the soldiers that need the help. I was an operation manager for about 12 years, and I actively decided about 6 years ago I needed to change my path. And suddenly I found myself, okay, well, I know how to make things happen. I'm a can-do person. You know, I'm the kind of person that if there's a way around it, I'll figure it out. Let's get it going. There's no problem we can't solve. And yeah, that's how we started. And a month in, we had treated about 1,500 soldiers. And my little car, my little Mazda 2, which goes by the name of Tutti, because she's a little red one. Tutti means strawberry in Hebrew. One morning we were supposed to be going to a base, and at the very last moment we had a cancellation. It happens sometimes being in war, sometimes the soldiers get moved, sometimes it's not safe enough for us to enter the area. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go visit my dog. I'd hit a bit of a wall. I had been going non-stop for 6 weeks. I was exhausted. I was emotionally drained. There was more news coming out about what had happened on October 7th at that point. And I just said, okay, I need a little time for myself. So I went to see my dog. And then I said, okay, I have to go. I actually have an interview. So I was on my way home, and I think I was just a bit burnt out. I don't remember what happened, but I had smashed into a van at quite a speed. One minute I was driving, and I remember thinking all the things I had to do before this interview. And the next minute I looked over and I said to myself, is that my airbag? It's exploded. Is my nose broken? What's happened? Was I in an accident? And then I looked up and my entire car was on fire. There was just flames all around me. And obviously I understood I had to get out the car as quickly as possible. But I couldn't. I was trapped in the car. The door wouldn't open. I couldn't move very much. I had deep impact and I didn't know if something was broken or what, but I was in so much pain and I couldn't really move and I couldn't get the door open. I didn't quite know this for a few days, but I had smashed into a Palestinian-Israeli man, and he had then realised that I was stuck in my car, and he ran and he opened my car enough to give me my hand, to give me his hand and to pull me out of the burning car. And as I stood up, it's a bit of a daze, but as I stood up, I remember putting my hand back and saying, right, I could grab my phone, it's on the stand. And he said, no. And the fire was actually already on the second half of the car. And I thought to myself, like, honestly, another second in that car, he would never have got the door open because it was on fire so much. And he said, we have to move now. We took 2 steps. And within a couple of seconds, it was like an action film. My entire car exploded. Literally exploded. There was fire and smoke everywhere. It was just before a storm, so it was super windy. And one minute I found myself in a police car and everyone's telling me, you're alive, you're alive, you're alive. Meanwhile, they're all ducking down because there's fire everywhere. And then I found myself in an ambulance. Now, since October 7th, all the ambulances in Israel have got faces of our hostages on them, on their windows. And I found myself sitting in the back of an ambulance with 2 Palestinian Israeli paramedics and a Palestinian Israeli who I had smashed into. And all 3 of them, because I could barely speak, never mind speak Hebrew, all 3 of them were trying to find a few words in English to tell me to breathe, that I was alive. And I remember looking at up and seeing these hostages' faces staring at me and these beautiful people trying to keep me calm. And out loud, I think I actually said, what universe am I in? It was the weekend that the hostages were being let out every night in groups of 10. And it was an incredibly dystopian feeling of, seriously, what world am I in? I have no idea where I am right now. I got to the hospital. I managed to borrow a phone of someone, contact my mother who lives in England. Mum, I've been in an accident. Can you please reach someone? My friend, whoever. I need someone to get to the hospital now. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know if I'm okay. I can't move, but I'm alive. I spent about a week resting at home. I was struggling at the beginning to breathe because of the bruising. And I slowly realized I had no internal damage, no broken bones, nothing but a few scratches and quite a lot of bruising, but just to my upper body. And it felt like a miracle. I mean, to be honest with you, it's nothing short of a miracle. And literally another second or two and nobody would have got me out alive. By the time I was in the ambulance, my entire car was gone. And we're talking a couple of minutes. Everything was gone. There was massage tables in there. I've pretty much been living out my car for the last 6 weeks. Everything I own was in it. Everything just gone. But I was alive and I was intact. And I had a deep understanding that God had saved me. For whatever reason, I had been truly and utterly saved. Like I had my own angel on me. And it kind of came to me that I'd been saved because I'm capable of making things happen. And I have to make Chayal's angels big. There's a mission here. It's not about me. It's not even about the volunteers. And everybody is volunteering their time at the moment. I don't just have therapists. I have people working on website, people growing social media for us, people growing branding and business coaching and all sorts of things. It's not just me. I just happen to be the face of it. I founded it 12 weeks ago, and never more than today do I feel that this mission is so vital that we get people to understand what it is we're doing and why. So we take all different kinds of holistic treatments, such as physiotherapy, chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, reflexologists for the feet, reflexologists for the face. I didn't even know that was a thing until recently, but it's magical. Reiki healers, energy healers, light healers, sound healers, yoga teachers, you name it, we try it. Breath work. At the beginning, it was just about helping them get through this physically. Like, how can we relieve their pain? But I very quickly understood that actually what these people need is help with their nervous system, with their soul, and with their energy, just as importantly. And soldiers go into a mode where you don't feel and you don't recognize trauma. You just get on with it. I mean, not one soldier complains out there, no matter how cold, how wet, how heavy, how exhausted, how long they haven't seen their family for. They just don't complain. It's like they become superhumans. But that also means that there's a lot of trauma building up. And although the North hasn't been spoken about as much as anywhere else in Israel, it's extremely active. I can tell you that myself, I have run many a time into protection, into buildings, because there is suicide drones around us, literally trying to attack us. There's been an instance where a rocket fell a few hundred meters from our front feet, literally, and they were like, there's times where they have to evacuate us out of the area. They tell us it's too dangerous right now, and there's also times where they try to do that, and then they tell us, hold back, it's too dangerous out there. Let's keep you here for now, where there's a bomb shelter, or there's too much gunfire. Some days we just pick up and move to the bomb shelters and we just keep working in there. Some days we set up in a bomb shelter. Some days we have silence and then we leave and there's heavy attacks straight afterwards. And it's extremely loud. And although we don't run and cry and shake from sirens, when there is a rocket exploding that close to you or being shot from Israel's side towards them, you can't help but jump. It kind of vibrates through your system. There's been times where we're at bases and they say to us, would you like earplugs to protect you? And I tell them, if you're good, I'm good. Treat us no different, but yet the soldiers protect us, would literally lay on top of us to save us if they had to. So what we're doing is working on as much of their nervous system and their trauma as we can now to prevent severe PTSD in the future. And I truly, truly believe this is how we save their lives. I have complex PTSD for myself from childhood. And I've also been suicidal in my life. And I went in Israel a few years back. I had a nervous breakdown. And I went to what is called a balance house, which is a holistic approach to therapy, live-in therapy. And I lived there for 6 weeks and it truly changed me forever. I feel like I got the best gift anybody could ever experience. I did not expect that in my mid-30s I would be given 6 weeks of quiet, 6 weeks with someone else taking my phone away from me, of being told where to go and just being given a space where it's totally okay to be honest and vulnerable and actually understand how many people want to help you. And I want to take that to the future of our soldiers. It's the most honored thing I've ever had a part in my life. And it's also the thing that I feel like everything led up in my life to be able to do. I feel like I walked away from that car accident and I said, okay, I know what I'm meant to do in my life now. This is what I was searching for forever. I can help these people. And if we don't attack their trauma at the same time right now, the chances of, the things you see in army dramas, TV shows, movies, severe PTSD, severe nightmares, that these are the things that tear apart families. And these are the things that, unfortunately, lead to suicide. So by attacking it from now, we have a head start on that for them. We have big, big plans. I hope that next year we would be able to open a holistic clinic where we can provide extremely low payment or even hopefully free treatment for reservists. That they can have, that my dream is that we have a psychologist and a social worker on board for them to get them through the bureaucratic system and to build a program for them. That we would have acupuncturists and physios and whatever else on staff, as well as trauma healing workshops, psychologists available for them, whatever it is that they need, because the medical system is incredibly overrun. And it already takes a long time to get to these things. And if you're in physical pain and you have trauma building without really understanding how to handle trauma, because the majority of humans experience trauma but don't necessarily know somatic healing, or that acupuncture is incredibly effective for PTSD, or that breath work is one of the most important parts on moving trauma through your body. You can talk and talk and talk, but we know that trauma sits on a cellular level in the body. And if you do not attack that side too, it can sit there for decades. And I want to make sure that we have an all-rounded approach for them, an introduction, so to speak.
You have the number 104. Yeah. Today's the 104th day. And you've been working on this for, what, maybe 94 days.
Yeah.
How are you?
It depends on the minute of the day that you ask me. On one part, I'm totally fine. In regular life, going to a busy supermarket can cause me to have a panic attack. I've suffered with anxiety since I was pretty young. But in an emergency, I thrive. And I can do this. If anyone can do this, I won't take no for an answer. I mean, I'm known to wake up sergeants and captains and, I know you're resting, but I need to get you some help for your body. And everyone's like, you can't wake him up. I'm like, watch me. I will. And on the other hand, I'm utterly broken in every way. I'm experiencing insane nightmares multiple days a week. My friends in America often get middle of the night phone calls from me where I just break. I'm doing my best not to focus on the hostages because I feel like we all have to choose our line. It's the only way to get through it. But every single soldier casualty hits me like a fresh stab wound. Every single one, you stare at their face, you acknowledge them, and in some crazy way you pray it's not one of your people. I'm disgusted by the world. I'm also sadly not shocked in many ways by the world. I'll never be the same. I'm not okay. None of us are. None of us are okay. We just do our best to hold it together because I truly believe that you fight bad with good. You do not fight evil with evil, you fight evil with light. And having been raised Jewish, having had every level of religious and not religious be a part of my life, I truly believe the only reason Jewish people exist is to be a light upon the nations. And if we have any chance of changing the world that we live in, we have to keep bringing in light. I've longed to be a mother my whole life since I was 14. For 24 years, it's all I've prayed for. And at the same time, I can't bear the thought of bringing a child into this world. I don't want anyone to grow up in this evil place. It's so messed up.
Today is Kfir Bibas's first birthday.
Indeed it is. No one deserves to be in captivity, let alone a baby. And he's become somewhat of Israel's baby, of the Jewish people's baby. I woke up this morning, I realized what day it was, and I cried for hours. I was trying to get ready to come out for meetings and I couldn't stop crying. And so I contacted a dear friend who has a company called Caked and Baked. And I said, do you have a spare birthday cake? And she said, I do. I said, please bring it for me. I cannot let today go by without Kfir having some form of celebration. No 1-year-old baby deserves to enter the milestone of becoming a toddler. No parent deserves the milestone of basically keeping a baby alive in this way. And I wanted to bring a cake today. I want us to take a bite of what Kfir can't. And when he comes home, he can have every cake in the world as far as I'm concerned. But for now, I hope you'll join me in wishing him a little happy birthday. We love you, Kfir. We will never abandon you. And you are in all of our hearts every minute of every day. May you live to be 120.
Amen.
It seems silly, but it's also how can you not acknowledge a 1-year-old's birthday? All I kept thinking was, what if this was my child? What if this was my baby? Having worked with babies for years, I've watched so many babies get their first cake, get that first taste of cake. My favourite part of being an aunt is I get to make all my niece and nephew's birthday cakes. Growing up, my aunt made all my cakes. And when my brother's boys were born, I turned around to my sister-in-law and I said, please give me the one privilege of making their cakes. And both of their first birthday cakes were a labour of love. And Kfir deserves it too.
Thank you. Thanks for telling me the stories. And thank you for what you're doing. It's really extraordinary.
We can all help somehow.
What do you need from other people in order to support what you're doing?
Well, we need a lot of help in many ways. You know, I'm one person. Sometimes I feel like I'm blind doing this stuff, but I'm still looking for certain business people to help. But the main thing we need, sadly, is funds. I'm trying to raise 3 million shekel, which will cover us, including payment for all the volunteers who've been working on everything with me. And none of them know about this. None of them know that I'm trying, you know, the therapists know that I'm trying to get to a point where I can give them some wages. But the website, the branding people, they don't know that I'm even trying to do this. They know I'm trying to raise money, but they don't know they're included in it. But I feel that they are the most important people. 3 million shekel would cover some salaries, all of the equipment that we need, transportation, gas, everything included to keep going for the next 12 months.
Do you have a structure set up where people can donate?
We have a website, which is chayalsangels.org. Please God, within the next 4 to 8 weeks, we will become a non-profit officially. And we are at the very beginning stage of this fundraising campaign. Up until now, it's just really been me on social media. It's not small. We've had about 60,000 shekel come in already in the last few months. That is what has been keeping us going. But we have very big dreams. We, please God, within a month, we'll have some merchandise available for sale, as well as sort of a Kickstarter-ish foundation where, you know, you donate this much and you get this. We're trying to give people things that they would actually use, you know, whether it be a sticker that can go on your notebook or a tote bag that you can take shopping, because people want to help and we know that, and people feel helpless. But Chayal's Angels, I have a dream that this will go on for years to come. And as I said, it will include a clinic, maybe even a balance house one day, but there's a lot of work to be done. And the main thing we need is fundraising. Later this year, I plan to take a small fundraising trip because unfortunately, Israel is not the place to get the money. Yeah. And we know this is going to go on for a long time, but I want to make sure that not only can we serve our soldiers during the war, but also for the few years minimum afterwards.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for the interview. And thank you for bringing Kfir's cake.
Let's have a bite. It's gluten-free. And I say, we shall say l'chaim, which in Hebrew means to life. L'chaim. I'm going to take this on the streets and offer people to celebrate his birthday.
Oh, that's wonderful.